Welcome to the very first episode of LARPers Got Talent, the web series that showcases LARPers and the wicked awesome talent they possess. LARPers are actors, artists, costumers, and more. Contrary to popular belief, these LARPers have successful day jobs and lives beyond their parents' basement. Meet Julianna. Julianna is a LARPer from Nero who now works as a digital librarian and homeschools her 6-year-old daughter. And one of her many talents, besides being a master cook, is at the wheel and loom, crafting her own homemade fabric.
I read a book when I was a little girl about a female witch, I guess, that used weaving as like part of what cast her spell of like protection around her. Like she wove this cloak and it was very symbolic to her growth as a woman, and then when she was done she had this like beautiful like armor of protection around her, and I thought that was such a cool story. So I found some good deals and found some videos online and learned how to do stuff, and it's a lot of making mistakes and learning as you go, and I think that that's a good part of the whole process too.
Let's imagine for a moment that we're settlers of Catan. We've got sheep, but now we need to make a blanket to keep warm, because as we all know, winter is coming. Thank goodness we've got Julianna, because she can show us how it's done.
Spinning works like this. There are individual scales on the outside of each hair that the sheep makes. And as you twist them together, the scales lock in place against one another, sort of like these Legos. So when you have Legos apart from one another, you can see the bumps, but what really makes them lock in place is the pressure that you put that locks them into place. And this is very much how fiber structure will work. The hairs are kind of stacked like bricks, and as you twist them, it provides the locking pressure that holds the scales against one another, and then your yarn doesn't fall apart. I buy my wool processed like this, in these strips called roving. And so they carded the threads and lined them all up and pulled them into this tube. I dyed it this lovely pink color, and now I'm going to spin it on my wheel. To start out, you have a place where the yarn grips onto the wheel. As you let the fibers pull on, it just twists them all together so that each individual fiber locks into place. It's taking the movement of my foot and moves the wheel a lot like a bicycle does. And that has a band that is attached, and it turns the wheel around, and the wheel turns the fibers around, and yarn is made. This is my favorite part, I think, of the craft. If I let only a few fibers in at a time, I can make an even, consistent, thin yarn like this. But if I let big chunks go through, I can create thick and thin spots, which I think adds a lot of visual interest.
Each bobbin takes about an hour to fill, and once 2 of these bobbins are filled, each called singles, Julianna plies them together to make a stronger thread.
This thing at the bottom is called a lazy Kate, and it holds the bobbins in place while you're doing your plying. I tie them on, and while the singles were spun with the wheel going clockwise, the plying happens with the wheel going counterclockwise. What I like about this is where the texture that I put into the singles can really shine, because there are some thin parts of the yarn and there are some thick parts of the yarn, and kind of like squeezes them in place, so it gives lots of interesting texture as it spins around. The other thing that I like about having dyed the yarn as independent singles is that now it's all one like dye lot, but here you can see this part, it's like stripes of like a lighter red and the darker, so I think that gives it some nice visual interest. I'd like to experiment with more of the art yarn styles. There's some really interesting stuff. If you look online, you can find different shapes that are made, applying different things in with beads and like little strips of fabric and just making all kinds of designs. My grandma and I are actually doing like a cooperative project where I'm gonna spin the yarn and then she's gonna crochet it.
When the plied thread is done, Julianna wraps the thread around something called a swift, which feeds into a ball winder. From there, she can load the handmade yarn into smaller bobbins.
So we took our singles and we plied them. And then I took the plied yarn, or the double yarn, and wound it onto these bobbins. And I have a bobbin loaded onto this thing called a boat shuttle, and here we are at the loom. There are two different kinds of threads, the warp threads, which go this way, and the weft threads, which I'm going to manipulate back and forth. There's not really a reason to be afraid to try something new. Because really all that you're out at the end of the day is like some hair of an animal. So, but if you don't try, you're never gonna learn. It has made me feel fearless about other endeavors. Each one of these threads goes through this bar here called the beater, which presses the fabric together, through these individual metal, they're sort of like a threaded needle, which I can raise and lower depending on which pedal I press, and then out the back and held around a bar that keeps it tight. And as I press the different pedals, it changes which thread is up and which is down, and that's how the fabric is created. So this is going to be made into a blanket. This is actually a seam. The fabric's folded in half. So the end blanket will be 42 inches wide. There's a very meditative, quiet process to spinning, and weaving is sort of the opposite of that. It's very active, and it's very, it exercises a part of my mind that I find needs exercising. Seeing it go from like raw materials to finished product is really gratifying. I'd like to learn some more weaving patterns, because there are actually ways that you can use the loom to make designs inside the fabric instead of just a plain piece of fabric. And I want to weave the silk fabric for my daughter's first communion dress. That's going to be really fun and really time consuming. I try to do something different every time that I make whatever, because why make it twice? And so now we can take our hand-spun, hand-woven blanket and keep warm on those cold nights in Catan.
If you're interested in learning how to make your own homemade fabric, there are plenty of online resources, which we have linked for you below in the doobly-doo. We hope that you enjoyed our very first episode of LARPers Got Talent. If you did, please like and drop us a comment. Also, subscribe to keep up to date on all of our LARP-related content. Also, check out our Patreon page where you can support videos like this one and make them even better. Until next time, LARP on!